Welcome to NightStoryX Fear, where every whisper hides a secret and every story leaves a scar. If you dare to listen, then like, share, and subscribe before the darkness takes you. And tell us in the comments what haunts you the most. NightStoryX Fear, where fear never sleeps.
Story 1. The Late Shift at the Las Vegas Data Center. The Coworker who wasn't there. The silence in the Henderson Data Complex, just miles off the glowing chaos of the Las Vegas Strip, wasn't restful. It was a vacuum. Marcus had the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. maintenance shift, babysitting thousands of servers whose collective hum was the only sound in his world. The complex was organized into cold fluorescent aisles. Marcus's only human contact was supposed to be the night lead, Dale. Dale was notorious, a ghost even when he was present. He handled the Tier 1 alerts from a secure, windowless maintenance room on the 3rd floor. It started a few weeks after Marcus took the job. While checking the perimeter security camera feeds, he noticed a glitch. Camera 3A, pointed down a rarely used corridor leading to an emergency exit, was showing an anomaly. It was Dale. He was sitting perfectly still in a plastic chair outside the maintenance room door. Dale was facing the wall, his back to the camera, motionless. Marcus zoomed in. Dale's posture was stiff, shoulders hunched. He wasn't on his phone, he wasn't asleep. He was just waiting. He hit the intercom. "Hey, Dale, everything okay on 3A? A moment of static, then Dale's voice crackled. Perfectly normal, slightly annoyed. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just debugging the new network router in the server hub. 1st floor, AL18. Why?" "Oh, never mind. Just thought I saw you somewhere else. Long night." He checked the feed again. The figure on camera 3A was still there, sitting exactly as before, staring at the empty gray wall. Over the next few nights, the routine repeated. Marcus would see the static figure, always motionless, always facing the wall on 3A. He would call Dale, and Dale would always answer from a different, legitimate location in the sprawling building. Marcus started to rationalize it. Maybe it was a reflection, a trick of the low light, or an old, forgotten mannequin from a previous tenant. But the figure changed. The first change was its visibility. It seemed darker, denser, as if the light was being absorbed by the fabric of its uniform. The second change was its proximity to the camera. On Thursday night, the figure was inches closer to the lens than it had been on Monday. It was shifting, crawling perhaps, towards the camera, but at an almost imperceptible rate. The real horror began when Marcus realized the figure's clothes were different. Dale wore standard navy coveralls. The figure on camera 3A wore a light gray polo shirt and jeans, clothes Dale wore on his first day, weeks ago, before he got his uniform. On the following Tuesday, Marcus saw the figure had moved again. It was now so close to the lens that he could only see the texture of the cloth on its back and the slight unsettling sheen of what looked like dampness spreading from the collar. Terror finally outweighed logic. Marcus grabbed his flashlight and his radio, telling the central hub he was going to investigate a maintenance issue on the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor corridor was freezing, colder than the server rooms. The air was thick with ozone and something else, a faint, stale scent like wet concrete and spoiled milk. Marcus walked slowly toward the emergency exit where camera 3A was mounted. He got to the corridor. It was empty. The plastic chair was there, slightly askew, but nothing else. Marcus took a shaky breath, telling himself it was the isolation and the caffeine finally playing tricks on him. He reached up and manually adjusted camera 3A, checking to see if the lens was smudged. It was focused perfectly. He could see the floor clearly, and on the smooth linoleum floor where the figure had been sitting was a large, dark, and perfectly defined outline of a seated man. The outline looked wet, but the air was dry. It was the exact size and shape of a human being, right down to the curve of the knees. The outline was cold to the touch. Marcus radioed in and requested emergency security. The official story, which he only heard fragments of later, was that Dale hadn't been to work in 4 weeks. He had died in a single car accident in Reno, hundreds of miles away, the week before Marcus started noticing the figure. His active keycard and employee ID was an oversight. What Marcus saw on the floor, the outline of the sitting man, wasn't Dale's presence. It was the cold, damp, waiting silhouette of a man who was already gone, tethered to the last place he was expected to be. And every night it had been crawling closer to the camera, looking for a way out of the silence. Marcus quit that day. He still can't stand the smell of ozone.
Story 2. Wall Street Analyst's Deadline. The Scent of Old Blood. The 40th floor of the high-rise overlooking the New York Stock Exchange was a temple of ambition. The air was dry, artificially cooled, and tasted faintly of expensive coffee and panic. Amelia lived in her cubicle, running on 3 hours of sleep and the brutal necessity of meeting the merger deadline. Her greatest source of anxiety wasn't the numbers. It was the man beside her, a senior analyst named Alex. Alex was a Wall Street legend, a machine who had apparently not left the building for 3 days straight. He never blinked. Literally. At first, Amelia thought it was an ocular tic, but watching him over the partition, she realized his eyes, veined and startlingly bright, were always wide open, fixed on the glowing spreadsheet. He didn't blink when she dropped a mug. He didn't blink when the fluorescent light sputtered directly over his head. And he didn't blink for what seemed like 20 minutes at a stretch. Then came the smell. It was subtle at first, masked by the high-end air filtration system. A faint, rusty, metallic tang.
Amelia first thought it was the cheap office chair or maybe old plumbing, but the smell was localized to Alex's cube, specifically around his monitor and keyboard. It smelled like copper. It smelled like old, dried blood. As the deadline approached, Alex stopped speaking in full sentences. He began to hum, a low, continuous monotone that was just audible enough to vibrate Amelia's desk. When he did speak, it wasn't to her. It was to the monitor. 7,834. The name is Carl. He wanted the account, but the account is mine. Carl was a former coworker. Amelia remembered the story. A brilliant analyst who had mysteriously been fired, rumor had it, because Alex had sabotaged his client list, driving Carl into severe debt and breakdown. One morning, 4 hours before the merger was finalized, Amelia walked in. Alex was gone. His cube was immaculate. The tool monitors were off. His chair was tucked neatly under the desk. His specialized ergonomic keyboard sat centered on the mat. There was no note, no sign-out sheet, no mention from security. Alex had simply vanished. But the smell was overpowering now, thick, iron-rich, and undeniable. Amelia cautiously approached his desk. On the center of the ergonomic keyboard, where the right palm rest curved inward, was a stain. It was perfectly circular, about the size of an old silver dollar. It was dark, almost black, and looked like a piece of polished, dried liver. Amelia touched it with the tip of her pen. It wasn't sticky. It felt strangely dry and papery, yet somehow organic. She called the cleaning crew. They tried everything: alcohol, ammonia, industrial solvent. Nothing made a difference. The stain remained, a perfectly dark circle baked into the pale gray plastic. Later that afternoon, a junior associate who was using Alex's desk called Amelia over, his face pale. I don't know what this is, he whispered, pointing at the stain. Amelia looked closer. The circular stain had changed. It was no longer uniform. Near the center, a white, almost phosphorescent pinprick had appeared. And around that pinprick, the dark material had begun to crack and contract, forming radial lines that looked disturbingly like the iris of an eye. Amelia leaned in, the scent of old blood surging up from the plastic. She saw her own reflection, distorted and small, in the dark, staring surface. The pinprick seemed to pulse once. She grabbed her things and ran. The last thing she heard as the elevator doors closed was the faint, low electronic hum coming from Alex's empty desk. She knew the machine that had been Alex had simply shed its skin when the deadline was met, leaving behind only the residue of its final, ruthless ambition.
Story 3. Silicon Valley Startup's Good Luck Charm. The Severed Connection. Nexus Dynamics, a machine learning startup in Palo Alto, was obsessed with two things: speed and superstition. The office was a bizarre mix of minimalist concrete walls and tacky good luck charms. The CEO, Marcus, a
different Marcus, had found the worst of these charms during the building's renovation. It was a petrified, palm-sized wooden doll, crudely carved and stained almost black by time. It sat on the centerpiece table in the open-plan office. Marcus called it the Oracle. The Oracle was unsettling. Its features were worn away, its left arm was missing, snapped off at the shoulder, and there was a hairline fissure running straight down its skull. Ben, a lead engineer, hated it, but he couldn't deny the results. After Marcus placed the Oracle on the table, Nexus Dynamics hit every ridiculous milestone. They coded a complex algorithm in 2 weeks. They secured a funding round that should have taken 6 months. The success came with a terrifying price tag. The first incident was when they secured their biggest client. Hours after the contract was signed, Clara, the lead sales executive, slipped in her kitchen. The result? Her ring finger, clean and perfectly, was severed by the disposal. An impossible freak accident. The next success, a breakthrough in their AI's learning model, was followed by disaster for David, a database architect. He was diagnosed with sudden, irreversible hearing loss in his right ear. The doctors were baffled. It was completely localized, like a neurological connection had been precisely clipped. Ben started to connect the dots. The doll's damage corresponded to the injuries. The severed left arm, Clara's left hand, severed finger. The split in the skull, David's right ear, the localized neurological damage. The Oracle wasn't a charm. It was a conduit. It was trading physical integrity for professional success, making a cruel transactional exchange that the CEO, the man who touched it most, was oblivious to. Ben was terrified. He spent a sleepless night researching, finding nothing on the doll, but realizing his coworkers were suffering while the company soared. He decided he had to destroy the doll before the next milestone, a massive product launch scheduled for that Friday. Thursday night, Ben waited until the office was empty. The air conditioning was humming, the server racks pulsed with silent energy. The Oracle sat on the centerpiece table, bathed in the sickly green light of the emergency exit sign. Ben approached it slowly. The wood felt cold, like damp granite. He had a wrench from the server room, intending to smash the doll into splinters. As his fingers closed around the cold, dark wood, a searing electric pain shot up his left leg. It felt exactly like a massive electric shock, a sensation of the nerves being overloaded, fried, and then, suddenly, chillingly, going quiet. Ben screamed and collapsed, the wrench clattering on the floor. He lay there, hyperventilating, waiting for the feeling to return to his leg. It didn't. The pain was gone, but so was the sensation. He tried to wiggle his toes. Nothing. He could move his ankle slightly, but his left foot was completely numb, heavy, and lifeless. When he looked back up at the table, the Oracle was exactly where it had been, perfectly centered. But now it was whole. The split in the skull was gone. The left arm had regenerated, the wood smooth and seamless, though still dark. The Oracle's surface seemed to glow faintly. Ben dragged himself out of the office and to the nearest emergency room. The doctors called it sudden onset neuropathy, claiming it was possibly stress-related. The next morning, Marcus, the CEO, came to Ben's hospital room beaming. "Ben, "You worked so hard. The launch was a success. We hit every metric. In fact, I think that little charm finally paid off for me." He was holding a framed printout of the launch metrics. In the background of the picture, sitting prominently on the centerpiece table, was the Oracle. But the doll was different. Now its right leg, from the knee down, was missing. Ben looked down at his own sheet-covered leg, then back at the picture of the now perfectly balanced doll. He knew the connection had been severed, and it was permanent. He was simply one more severed connection keeping the Nexus Dynamics success machine running. And the next time the company needed a win, Ben knew which one of his coworkers would be missing a part of themselves.